This podcast is not suitable for children or those who are easily disturbed. Spoiler warning for whatever is in the title of this episode.
I was just reading a scary book.
Oh my god, this is terrible. When did they get to killing the children?
This is literature? A 2-year-old could have written this.
We will be requiring a bedtime story.
Oh, I don't like this book. This is going on forever.
Oh, I just wanted to see kids fight to the death is all.
Look at me! I'm enjoying reading!
Thank you. And now your hosts, returning for their 4th consecutive year, Daniel, Ryan, and Hef.
One of them wears deodorant. I don't know which one.
Welcome to episode 149 of The Horror of Babylon, where we discuss Ender's Game. I'm Ryan, and with me as always is Daniel. Say hi, Daniel.
Hi, Daniel.
And Hef's here too.
How y'all doing? Good to be here.
It is especially good to say thank you to our patrons, including Logan, the Full Metal patron, and Sierra, the Keyblade patron. And thank you to Four Horsemen Comics and Gaming, which you can visit at the mall in Morgantown, West Virginia, at the mall at Robinson in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. You can shop online at fourhorsemen.tcgplayerpro.com, and you can visit their newest location on the Bugger Homeworld, where Ron was told that there were no bugs left whatsoever, and then he found out that one little boy was holding a single cocoon, and Ron packed up and left because Ron hates bugs. He once gave away a car because there was a spider in it.
Please
Ron would hate bugs.
Is that a true story? That sounds great.
He didn't give it away. He pulled over and got out and left it. Left it on the side of the road. The car's of spiders now.
I think we should go to his house one day and just cover his car in fake spiders.
Ooh.
But like nice realistic looking ones.
Ugh.
I think that'd be a fun prank.
The funniest prank that he ever did that he told me about was a mutual friend of ours. He started randomly mailing packages of rubber ducks, and he just mailed him thousands of rubber ducks.
You know what else is a funny?
Thousands?
You know what else is a real funny prank?
Damn.
What?
Telling your siblings that you're going to kill them in the most serious way possible. Can you guess who my favorite character is?
You and I are going to have fun tonight.
No, we're not. All right, trigger warning.
Child soldiers.
Adults manipulating children, genocide, specieside, purposely inflammatory political figures. I don't recommend starting this book on an election day as a distraction, because it will not be as big a distraction as you hope it will be.
God, let's see here. Population control, if that triggers you. Religious suppression.
Serious bullying.
This book was Daniel's pick. Daniel, why don't you give us your history on it and tell us why you chose this book?
I was in a class in high school, actually, which is probably a little bit past this book's like reading demographic normally. But all the class was is you sat in the class and read, and you wrote reports about the book you read. And this was one of the books that I read in there. And then for about the next 10 years, I would say, pretty consistently, I would read the book once a year. It's my favorite book for the longest time. It still probably is, but it's now like constantly competing with Shogun. Like those are always competing for the top spot. And every time I read another part of the Asian saga, then first place is like sort of cycling. Then I went and, God, this was probably about 5 years ago. 4 or 5 years ago, because it was before Carrie was in nursing school. And we decided we were going to do a book exchange reading program. I would recommend she read a book, and I would read a book that she recommended. I'm still kind of butthurt, because I read 3 or 4 of the books that she wanted me to read, and she read one of mine.
You don't start the second one until she finishes the first.
I should have known better. I thought that she would, she said she needed a break after Ender's Game because it gave her PTSD, so I gave her a break, and then it just never continued. And then I was like, I wonder if this book will give other people PTSD. So I decided to pick this book.
It did not give me PTSD.
Okay, see? I didn't think it was that bad.
I just thought it was insanely sad.
Sad, I get. A lot of the quotes are really sad, too.
Apparently, I knew nothing about this book. I thought this book was The Giver, and this book... I had never read Ender's Game or The Giver, but what The Giver is, I thought that was Ender's Game, and I was wrong.
It's really weird that you mention that, because a lot of times when you like read Ender's Game or you like do stuff, The Giver's like one of the top recommendeds that start showing up.
Good old Lois Lowry.
Yeah.
I think I read The Giver.
I haven't either, but I thought I've heard about it for so long, but for some reason I thought that was Ender's Game. So I knew nothing about this book.
No, Ender's Game is just Battle Royale, but they don't tell the kids that they've killed each other.
That one. Okay.
Well, they don't tell one of the kids.
Yeah, I only happened twice. It was the same kid.
That was two different kids.
But it was Ender.
Yeah, it was Ender. Yeah.
Damn.
Yeah.
I had no previous. I've seen this book on people's desks a lot. Like, if you weirdly, like, in several years of my life, like, this is like one book that I frequently would walk by people I worked with's desk. No matter where I went, somewhere always had this book on their desk, and I never knew why.
The question is, do you know why now?
No.
The vampire's a pure myth, superstition. I may be able to bring you proof that the superstition of yesterday can become the scientific reality of today.
All right, let's jump into background. This novel is actually an adaptation of the short story Ender's Game, which was first published in the August 1977 issue of the magazine Analog Science Fiction and Fact. Both the short story and the novel are written by Orson Scott Card. Card's original inspiration for this was when he read a book about World War I fighter pilots, and the book explained that a large number of the fighter pilots died or were never able to become pilots because they had trouble thinking on multiple planes. I actually did not mean that to be a pun. But they were just concerned about enemy fighters coming at them from like the front or behind or the side. They couldn't wrap their mind around that enemy fighters could come from above, they could come from underneath, they could come diagonally.
Three-dimensional space was just kind of a new concept in that.
So he wanted to write... So he wanted to write a story where a character who understood that would explain it to other characters. And that was kind of the original emphasis for this. So, and then how it became a novel is he actually got a contract to write Speaker for the Dead, which is the sequel to Ender's Game, which he started doing and then realized that he couldn't do it the way the short story ended. So he renegotiated and got a new contract to turn Ender's Game into a novel and then write Speaker for the Dead.
Which is also a banger. The series doesn't go downhill to about book 4.
Book 4 of 19. Book 20 comes out, is being written now.
I've only read 6 of them.
Book 20 is called The Queens.
Okay, now I gotta read that one.
Speaker for the Dead was released in 1986.
These books are older than Daniel.
The 1991 version of Ender's Game had some revisions. Card made several minor changes to reflect the political climate of the time. Basically, he had to include the decline of the Soviet Union because it was written prior to the end of the Cold War, and he updated it after the end of the Cold War, and that's explained in the afterword of Ender in Exile, which is the book in the series that was published in 2008. And he said that many of the details in chapter 15 of Ender's Game were modified so that they would make more sense within the canon in the subsequent novels. Ender's Game was the first science fiction novel to be published entirely online. It appeared on Delphi a year before it was published in print paper. It won Ender's Game and Speaker for the Dead won the Nebula Award in 1985 and the Hugo Award in 1986, both of those for Best Novel. It was nominated for a Locus Award, and it was honored with a spot on the American Library Association's 100 Best Books for Teens. In terms of adaptations, 2 different video game adaptations have died in development. The novel was adapted by Marvel Comics in 2008. There was an audio drama released in 2013, and of course an audiobook, which is how I consumed it. And there, at the end of the audiobook, there is a very lengthy afterword. I swear Orson Scott Card talks for like an hour. And in that he said that he believes that the greatest adaptations of his work are audiobooks, not movies, because he always intended for his books to be read to people. He envisioned kids reading them to each other, parents reading them to their kids, teachers reading them to their students.
The copy I had a forward in it, and he talked about that a little bit. He was very scathing towards some people in the
including Macaulay Culkin and Chris Columbus. What the fuck, Orson Scott Card?
He wasn't very nice to one of his critics and to one of the
he's kind of bitchy.
Yeah, it was honestly kind of fun because I don't follow authors except Stephen King all that closely because I just happen to follow him on Twitter. Mm-hmm. But Orson Scott Card was like in this forward, he was talking about like how this woman sent him a letter saying kids don't talk like this, and his response is
duh.
No, his response was no, they don't talk like this in front of you because you're a school counselor.
Well, they also don't talk like this.
I disagree. I talked a lot like this.
And one film adaptation in 2013, directed and written by Gavin Hood, who you may know better from the X-Men Origins Wolverine. Orson Scott Card wrote the original draft of that screenplay.
And that's that. Another story in the classic, infallible 3-act structure. Good enough for Aristotle, good enough for The Simpsons.
Mr. Sislak, I have a feeling there's going to be one more act to this story.
Well, I'm not hanging around for that. 4 acts.
Jumping into structure and themes, to me, the biggest takeaway of this book is the structure. So we have to start there. I kind of have a mini rant, but I want to throw the ball to you guys first.
Heck, you first.
Buddy, I didn't even follow half the book. I'm gonna try not to be mean.
Be mean.
There were points of this book where I was really on board, and then almost a chapter later, I would be like, "Why the fuck am I reading this?"
Let me say what I'm going to say.
Sure.
Maybe you'll agree with me.
Sure.
In my head, I broke this book down into 4 parts, and I'm going to tier them. The first part, not in order, but the first part I'm going to discuss, the core of the book, is Battle School. To me, just Battle School is arguably like one of the greatest sci-fi novels ever written. Is absolutely fantastic. I completely devoured it. I thought it was so good. Next part of the book is Command School. Also interesting, but way too rushed. Super fast. Just spent no time building that whatsoever. It's just like, we're here. There's Mazarek, boom, 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 boom. It's you killed them all. It's over. And then the next part of the book is Peter and Valentine as Pinky and the Brain, and it's just like, what the fuck is this? And get it out of my book.
You didn't like them taking over the world as internet trolls?
No, I thought it was absolutely distracting and horrible.
Oh, it's great. It's very predictive, too.
Peter is my Koontz of the book.
Peter is also my Koontz.
Wow.
Well, Peter/Valentine.
It's really weird because I was going to argue that it was one of the most overlooked predictive part of the text.
It doesn't make it enjoyable to read.
It just didn't go anywhere.
It also, it does. There's no resolution to it.
Yeah,
it's just a big distraction. And I know that it's hard to say that because those characters are important in other books, and he's building things that happen in other books. But I can only talk from the experience I have, and the experience I have is this massively annoying subplot that he spends a lot of time building, and then there's no resolution for. And it has nothing to do with the core story.
You built Mussolini, who just grew old and died. Like, that's what happened.
And then the fourth part would be kind of, it's not an epilogue, but it's basically an epilogue. Basically, everything that happens after they tell Ender the truth, it felt like the book should have just ended there, which is actually where the short story ends.
Like, that to me, that whole little section there was just basically like, it's what I imagined all the other books would be, but it was his notes of what every book after that was going to be.
So I also read the short story. The short story ends when they tell Ender the truth. That, no, you were actually the fleet commander. You killed the homeworld. That's where the short story ends. He wrote this book primarily because he needed that like epilogue at the end to make it mesh with the next stuff. So when if it feels tacked on, it's because it's literally tacked on.
I disagree with both of you.
Please elaborate.
The subplots 100% go somewhere because it informs why Ender makes the choices he does at the end of the book, and why he can't go back to Earth, because they changed the entire political landscape of Earth via influencing people's opinions. The whole book is about how psychology of characters interact with each other, and how political figures influence generations, and how that even forms religions over time.
But I think the book should have ended before any of that would have even mattered.
To me, as a person who just doesn't, I guess, I'm not big into sci-fi as far as books, so maybe I'm just not familiar with the niches. I'm not really into the psychology of the book, or whatever, however you want to phrase it. But to me, this book felt a lot like somebody writing things he really wanted to write about, but did not know how to.
Oh wow, I really disagree with you there.
I'd
agree with that from book 3 on. Though.
Most stuff just seems confused. Like he knows where Ender wants to go. He knows where all his characters want to go, but it just doesn't finish anything. Like, he blows up the homeworld. That's cool, but it's just kind of right there. Like, there's no build up to that. To me,
the build-up was the entire conditioning a child to be so uncaring in a battle to where he'd made choices that just wouldn't matter anymore to do what the adults wanted him to do.
But you gave me a character that was like, it's not that he didn't feel, but I had a hard time understanding his feelings, because his feelings were just kind of one bullet sentences.
He's not a super emotionally deep character.
No.
Yeah.
But he is kind of a character archetype. Who's the reanimator guy again? Who's the doctor? The professor?
Oh shit! I should know this.
But you know, he's a Sheldon Cooper. He's a that guy. He's
just a brain.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, they were practicing eugenics to literally create genius child soldiers.
Yeah.
This is a book I just found very hard to relate to. I think that's my biggest problem with this.
I also had a lot. I was going to save this for characters. I know a lot of people find Ender Wiggins to be extremely relatable. I like, and afterward, like Orson Scott Card spends a lot of time talking about, oh, I got all these letters from all these kids and how they relate to Ender, and it's just like, Ender is me, Ender is me, Ender is me. And if I read this book in middle school, I might feel the same. But I'm reading this as a 36-year-old man, and I cannot relate to Ender whatsoever, and I just feel sad for him. That's the only emotion I can have for Ender.
Yeah, I mean, that's part of the pathos of the book. The book wants you to feel bad for child soldiers and people that had to have... He even talks about this in the foreword for the copy I have, where he's like, kids in the Civil War were younger, and he keeps going backwards in time and like telling you, can you imagine what it would be like to have to face down enemy soldiers at this age? Well, what about this age? What about this age? And he's like, the further back you go, the younger child soldiers are. And he's like, well, now imagine a world where we had such a massive enemy that we had to start throwing children into a meat grinder again. And that's the world he's created. It's a world that's been invaded by aliens twice. The planet was glassed in the first war. The fleet was decimated in the second war. And so now they're like, well, now we have to create a new big fleet. And but at the same time, they're practicing population control because they're trying to create a world where they have very specific soldiers that they can throw into the meat grinder and people just don't question.
Yep. I like the world building. Like, I had no issue with any of that stuff.
This book had a lot of things where, like, there would be points of it where I was, like, all in. Like, I was really interested. Like, the Battle School stuff,
Battle School was amazing.
I love the Battle School stuff.
Yeah.
It's just the book that... There were just sections of this book that I would listen to, I would read, and my brain would just shut off.
For me, it's like, okay, you're gonna be Locke, and you're gonna be this Greek guy, and we're gonna get Dad to give us access to the internet, and we're gonna start writing these letters on these message boards, and it's like, oh my God, get back to Battle School.
Ah, man, I loved the internet trolling leads to WorldCon.
For me, as a person, it's just too high functioning. These kids are just too high functioning for me to really grasp.
So, at the beginning of the book, I had issues with the kids. Like, okay, these kids do not feel real. They do not feel realistic. They're way too smart. No, they don't talk. Kids don't talk like this. Kids don't act like this. But that got better for me because it's in a science fiction setting, and I can handle not realistic kids better in a science fiction or a fantasy setting than I could. Like, if this was like a modern day drama, like, I'd be like, this is stupid. But I had a better time with it because it's in a science fiction setting. But I think ultimately what I prefer is, I always prefer a book that writes kids realistically, and I think that's why It is such an amazing novel, because those children feel like children. They talk like children. They act like children. They make decisions that children... Granted, they don't have, a whole government that's built this whole infrastructure just to manipulate them and turn them into murderers. So, it's two different worlds. But it was a big adjustment. The first part of the book, I had to kind of get over that.
I had the opposite thing, where I didn't really have a problem with that at the beginning because I went in with that mindset. I guess I just wasn't prepared for the longevity of that happening.
Oh, it's the whole book.
And I think that, like, this is a book where, like, I legitimately got to the end of the book and I told myself at the end of it, this is just not for you.
Yeah.
It's like, because there's parts of this book, like, I really enjoy. Like I said, the Battle School stuff, like, despite what I said earlier with the twist being that he blew up the planet, I thought that was brilliant.
Yeah, I also like that.
I loved it. I thought that was great. So there's parts of this book that I'm like, this is probably some of the best stuff I've read in a hot minute. This book is so 50-50 for me. And I had a hard time being able to say I like the book when I only like about half of it.
Yeah,
the book is one giant morality exercise where it's asking you, at what point do they cross the line?
Before the book even started.
Yeah. Well, if an alien species came to genocide you twice, you can't communicate with them. At what point is it no longer self-defense is the question.
You spend your technology on developing a means of communication instead of this planet-killing weapon.
That's all well and good, but we haven't experienced that. It'd be like, okay, the Nazis developed the atom bomb first. Do we spend our time trying to negotiate with them, or do we try to develop our own atom bombs? It's an arms race, and they can't communicate with the aliens because they're not around anymore. They said they tried every means of communication they could think of. And at the end of the book, they even tell you, the aliens have been trying to communicate with you. It's not working.
I don't believe them when they say that.
That the book explicitly tells you.
It tells you that they said that. They said that to Ender.
No, the aliens specifically tell Ender that we've been trying to do it.
No. I don't believe the adults when they say that they've tried everything they can to communicate with them. I don't believe that.
There's a lot of intrigue in this. Like, most of the book, I felt like basically everybody was lying.
Yeah.
Like, I think Ender is the only person in the book where you're like, even then I'm kind of sure. But everybody else...
Maybe he lies to himself at points.
Everybody else feels like they're lying.
Everybody is totally
That's the
full of
whole
shit.
reason they say they needed a child anyways, because they needed somebody who would just do the things without overthinking it.
Who would just kill the billions of sentient beings.
And that's why they manipulate shit. They go, this is why it had to be a kid.
Yeah.
Because an adult would second guess all the decisions. They would think about the fleet actually being living people. That's why it had to be simulated as a video game. Because when you're not thinking about, like, these are actual lives, then your decisions are different.
And if they tried to do that same thing with an adult, they would question it. Be like, well, why are you having me play this simulation? Why don't you have me, like, out in the field, like, blah, 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 blah. But a kid just believes, okay, Okay.
Like, even Mazer brings it up. Like, he's like, I wanted to go out and be with my fleet, but they're like, no, you have to stay here to train to manipulate a kid. Like, he's like, if I'm gonna die, I want to be out there with my men. And he would have been, like, on the first fleet with the shitty ships.
First fleet with the shitty ships. Yeah. All right, let's jump into themes. Dystopian future, OBS.
Police states. Oh yeah, like the International Fleet controls pretty much the entire planet, and that only starts to crumble underneath the idea that, well, the threat's no longer here.
Okay, so when you say police state, I imagine like 1984, where they have cameras in your home.
They literally have monitoring chips on the back of children and monitor. They know who Locke and Matheson are. They're like, we're gonna see what happens. They monitor everything. They control the internet. They can take your children if they want to. They can control how much you breed. And if you don't do that, then they put...
Okay, so a police state, but just not to the extreme of 1984.
Yeah. And they have they use propaganda with the bugger tapes. Ender talks about how he had to take all the bits and pieces of different videos to even get a coherent idea of what actually was going on.
Conflict with alien species.
The one thing I really like about this one is they made the aliens as alien as possible. The only person I think that's done this better in a really long time, or that did this better beforehand, was Isaac Asimov, when he had like a literal gas giant be a sentient creature, because that's even more alien. These are things that don't talk, they don't have radios, because they've never needed them, so why would they have communication equipment? They've always communicated.
The queen bee thing.
Yeah.
Like where they have the main, like...
A hive mind.
Yeah, the hive mind.
They have a hive mind, and so to them, they're like, well, we'll just kill all these drones and just take their queen. Doesn't matter.
Yeah. Correct me if I'm wrong. I may have been... But Mazer accidentally found how that worked, right? That was not
he just noticed...
He noticed the one wasn't like the other ones. It wasn't doing the same thing.
Yeah, he noticed that just this one ship was just a slightly bit different, and on a hunch,
he just shot it. And
he was like,
I
think that this is how they work. And apparently that one of the books I haven't read, which is about the second invasion, is about him discovering and how his thought process worked on that. I haven't read those books. I've only read the mainline series and a couple of spin-offs. Which, Speaker of the Dead is kind of fascinating, because you get to go to a Catholic planet and how they're trying to interact and convert aliens. Because they find another alien species called the Pigs, or the Piglies, or something.
It's about as good a name as the Buggers.
Yeah. Which I think was a name that they gave to, dehumanize. Because, again, it's a propaganda. You want them to be cowboys and Indians, humans and buggers. You give kids bugger masks so they learn to shoot at each other, and as long as you have a common enemy, I have a recommended reading after this, which...
I do too, and it's an anime.
Is it Attack on Titan?
No.
Oh, mine's Attack on Titan.
Mine is much more similar to this than Attack on Titan.
I have an argument for this.
I don't. Mine is, it's just the same thing as this, except they use mechs.
Oh, okay.
Well, I mean, that sounds like fun.
Yeah.
Wait, have I seen this one?
I don't know.
Okay. Well, we'll get there.
What just make up anime.
I know. Dan to Dan is an anime. It's fantastic.
I'm sure it is. You wrote it, so you obviously love it.
It honestly does sound like something I would write.
It's even named after himself.
What other themes do we got? What are we doing?
Yeah. What a segue.
Intergroup dynamics of children.
I think it handles hierarchies of bullies pretty well. Kids form cliques. It's just, well, adults do too.
People do.
Yeah. But the way kids do it, at least from what I remember from being on the outside looking in, it's very familiar.
The morality of murder and war.
At what point is it not okay?
It's never okay. Expansion.
Of what?
Of your territory. Imperialism.
Yeah.
Is it okay to practice imperialism when someone was imperializing you?
No.
We can also own space.
It's never okay to practice imperialism.
To be fair, I don't think the buggers had a concept of it. Because they didn't really have a concept of culture.
The buggers were the elves, and the humans were the tribeless dwarves. When the elves first encountered the dwarves, they thought they were animals, and they hunted them for fun.
Yeah, that's a good example.
That's what happened. Is it okay? No. Okay, let's go to characters.
I thought he'd like to talk about that more. Usually he loves talking about war.
They're coming to get you, Barbara.
The Wiggins. Ender Wiggin.
I felt very bad for this kid.
I felt extremely sad for this child.
This is the character that gave Carrie PTSD.
I get it.
But
I get it.
It didn't give me PTSD.
Yeah. I just constantly felt like
bad.
Which it's the one thing the book does very well is like this kid is very good. Like he's very like exceptional at everything he does, which just alienates him more.
Except for making friends. That I can relate to.
I guess this falls more under the adults, but it's what they do to Wiggin. The book is very good at portraying psychological tactics that actual militaries use, such as isolating a single individual to bring a unit closer together. Have you guys seen Full Metal Jacket?
No.
Also no.
in that they isolate the fat character, and it leads to him shooting his commanding officer and then himself in the face.
Yeah. Not a huge Kubrick fan.
I think I know the scene you're talking about.
I mean, I've seen like the Arlie Ermy Queers in Texas.
Oh yeah,
I've seen that clip.
Yeah.
But
I'm guessing that Orson Scott Card literally just took a book of how do military officers manipulate their soldiers and how can I apply it to children.
Probably.
That with the less cookies.
Anything else on our main character?
Not really. I just felt bad for him most of the book, and
really
there's.
I had trouble relating, but I didn't have trouble with sympathy.
Yeah, no, I agree with that.
Do you agree that the book, with at least the military's premise, that they needed somebody who could empathize enough to understand their enemy?
Yes.
Yes.
I mean, I think it's important to understand where something comes from.
Yeah.
It also...
It's why they thought Peter wouldn't be able to win. They were like, Peter's smart enough to win, he's ruthless enough to win, but he won't care about his enemy enough to understand what they're doing.
And Valentine is smart enough, but not savage enough.
Yeah, she would care too much.
And Andrew is just the perfect middle.
I have always found this funny, because this is just, I guess, book logic. They're like, okay, we're practicing eugenics, we're trying to get the perfect kid here. The first two didn't quite work. I bet you a third one will be the balance of the force.
Third one's a charm.
Yeah, explain to Anthony.
Okay, Valentine. I've said what I wanted to say.
They tried, I guess. I don't know.
The first part of the book, like up to where he leaves with Graf, would have been enough to explain his motivations, at least to me. Like, he loves Valentine. He has this horrible relationship with Peter, and that would have been enough for me. I would have gotten rid of this love plot.
She has my favorite quote in the book. I sold my brother and they paid me for it.
There are a lot of good quotes in this book. Like, I will say that. I just wish I could remember half of them.
The book is very quotable, but if you're not... I guess if you haven't read it 20 times like me, you don't remember.
Yeah, no. I remember being impressed with some of the dialogue.
He's a good writer.
Valentine, to me, is that character that... The tragedy for Ender is literally everyone manipulates him. Even the people that supposedly love him, and that includes Valentine. At the end of the day, when Valentine's brought out to the raft, she's also manipulating. She's doing it not just for the army, but also for herself. She's like, you're going to literally kill me if you don't stop the buck, because again, she's been subject to the same propaganda.
She thinks the buggers will kill them.
Yeah, she's like, you not doing this is literally killing me. And that's what eventually gets Ender to get back up. Everyone's manipulating each other in this book, and I do think it's tragic. I was going to say poignant, but it's more tragic that when you think about it, even people you love often manipulate you, even if they don't realize it, or even realize the reasons they're doing it.
You could call parenting manipulation.
One of my
subtle grooming.
One of my least favorite things about the sequels is they expand on Ender's parents too much. I mean, it makes sense because in the sequels they're like, yeah, it's funny that our kids don't realize they get our super genius genes from us. Like, they're aware of what their kids are doing on the internet. They know what Ender's doing in battles because they're also super geniuses. They know how to get this information.
They are?
Yeah, they just pretend. And it's what do you call it, a retcon in the future books. They're like, no, we've known the whole time, but we're just kind of doing this so that they can pretend to manipulate their ways around us.
I knew Leia and Luke were going to be sisters.
Yeah,
or brothers and sisters.
I did? It's one of the things I don't like about the sequels is Orson Scott Card walks back on, like, the ignorant... Because sometimes...
Oh, when you write 20 books in
Yeah.
one day, it's...
I thought that when I first read this book, I thought the point wasn't that they're, like, literally stupid. It was just to be, like, parents are ignorant sometimes of what their kids do behind their back. It wasn't meant to be literal. It's more like, here's an example of parents just kind of being dense.
I didn't spend that much time thinking about the parents, to tell you the truth.
Yeah.
I kind of forgot about them after the first couple chapters.
Yeah. Well, the first thing that they do is, like, they're sad because their kid is literally being drafted. And it's...
Then they forget him.
Well, that's just what happens over time. Eventually, people forget each other. Like, doesn't matter how much you love somebody, eventually your life just carries on. And that's, again, part of the tragedy of war that I thought was being communicated in the book.
This book went over my head a lot. Like, I don't really have a...
This book is the reason I did a psych degree.
Like, I'm not going to, like, I'm not going to tell you you're wrong about anything, because... Most, like I said, half of this book, like, this is one of those books where I'm like...
I like the anime parts.
Well, the anime parts are the best part, like, anytime...
Ender's a new type.
There's a freaking really dumb video game that I played in college that I only really liked because all the different squads of the armies had, like, their own animals, and I was like, it's just like Ender's Game! I'm in Rhino Army!
I'm in Rabbit Army!
Yeah, it's great. That's fucking fantastic. Who's Peter, my favorite character.
I thought he was going to be my favorite character in chapter 1. Oh, how I was wrong.
I don't know why, but I always gravitate towards sociopaths. And again, he's kind of ruined in subsequent books where Orson Scott Card's like, no, he really wasn't a sociopath, I promise. I'm like, okay, buddy.
Oh, so
he's getting squirrels like you're. It's one of the things I don't like about his retroactive writing is like he's like, I went too far with this kid. I'm like, that was the point.
Yeah, I mean...
The point was to have somebody so far in the extreme that he served as a counterbalance so you could have a character literally commit genocide that you still felt sorry for.
See, I assumed they were going to, like, set something up for that, because, like, he's, like, you know, you've got your good kid and then you've got your bad kid. I was thinking, like, maybe they were doing, like, a Cain and Abel kind of thing. And then, again, like,
they just forget about it.
They just forget it. They just...
Like, two-thirds of the way
just
through the
nothing
book.
happened.
It's just... The only part of Peter that matters is the psychology of the characters. It's... Ender doesn't want to become this guy. That's what the whole game is for.
So I say, like, that first those first, like, 2 chapters, that would have been enough.
That's fine, yeah. The rest of it is just like him and Valentine doing their, you know, world takeover on the internet.
And then it cycles to...
We're Peter and Valentine. We're Peter and Valentine.
Peter...
One is a genius. The other one is 2.
Peter influences the world. He wants to get Ender back to be his puppet. Valentine doesn't want him to be his puppet, so she releases information that will keep Ender from going back to Earth. That way it segues into the sequel.
I don't have anything to provide on that. Peter, to me, was just, he went nowhere. Like, I thought that was going to be a real cool thing that it was going to eventually build up to, and it just didn't, and that's where I'm at with it.
Battle School! Bean!
He gets his own book.
Ender's Shadow.
Yep.
Which the movie is, according to the afterword, which this may not be true because the afterword was written after the movie's production was started, but before the movie was actually released. But according to Orson Scott Card, the movie was going to be an adaptation of Ender's Game and Ender's Shadow, with Ender and being dual protagonists.
That's not quite true. It probably they cut out the entire Peter subplot in the movie.
Yay.
But at the same time, you don't get how bad Peter is because you don't see him like skinning squirrels alive. So you see him bully Ender once, and then in the movie it's like Ender's like, I don't want to become this guy. But you don't get a lot of like the flashbacks or the context of him like literally threatening to kill them several times.
So in the afterword, Orson Scott Card spends like 20 and it's explaining how he's turned down multiple movie deals because they wanted to make Ender 16. And he eventually found a producer who understood him, and he secured a deal, and he signed a thing saying he would not do the movie unless Ender was portrayed as 12 or under.
Yeah.
And he's 15 in the movie. So apparently they just finally
they just
threw enough money at him.
I also think that sometimes it's hard to find a kid that's acting is that good in that age range. It's better these days than it used to be.
Which he also talks about that in the afterword, and that's when he threw shade at Macaulay Culkin.
But I also kind of agree that from like a psychological perspective, the older a kid gets, the less the idea of what the army was trying to do to them works.
Teenagers will push back.
They'll push back more.
Yeah.
They will question
things.
More.
The character has to be under 12. The story that's being told in the novel doesn't work with a teenager.
I do like Bean.
We're talking about Bean.
He's better, and he gets more. He gets an actual arc in his own book, because he's kind of just introduced to be like Ender's Ender.
Yeah.
Like who Ender sees as himself, and like he's getting that experience that he got when he first arrived in Battle School.
And I wrote down 5 characters from Battle School, and now that I'm looking at them, I don't actually know what we're going to say about each of them. I don't. So I'll say I wrote down Bean, Eli, Dink, Petra, and Bonzo.
All of these characters, I do agree that most of the, especially the minor characters, aren't so much as characters as they are psychological exercises when it comes to how Ender's being manipulated and how he bounces ideas off of like other psychological exercises. Mm-hmm. Dink is what happens if I do push back against the commanders, because he's like, I refuse to be a commander. They put me in a room and I just sat there. I didn't do it. I wasn't going to do it. And eventually he does cave and break down. Mm-hmm. Same thing with Ender. Eventually he caves and does what they want him to do. Petra is very much, hey, what happens when you put a woman in an army that is primarily male dominated?
She becomes a sniper.
Well, a lot of times, and they talk about this, like you have this, like Bonzo, he doesn't want people to walk around naked in front of her, and Ender's like, that's stupid, she's also a soldier. Like, why would we care? But he's also like 8 at the time.
Why are you bringing this up, Orson Scott Card? Could you not think of a different example? Are you a sex pervert like Stephen King?
Oh no, because he makes everyone stay fully clothed around her. And but the commanding officer of the female is just so quick to slap her, so quick to won't give her a commanding position even though she's qualified. It's like, well, but she has to work harder, is a point that the book brings up, which.
Yep.
For a guy who's hyper-traditional like Orson Scott Card, good psychological military practice thought exercise. Ally is when you finally form a friend, but they have to become your rival because that's just the nature of where you're at. That's the nature of Battle School. They used to be the dude who whispered, peace in your ear, but now you have to fight against each other because that's just where you're at. It's friends eventually become enemies whenever you have things as abstract as borders.
They never fought against each other, though.
Yeah, but I insinuated that they were probably going to have to.
But they never did.
Yeah, but that's what the exercise is a peace eventually breaking down between people. That's why they use the specific word, Salome. Who else is that? Bonzo I fucking love.
That's probably the best scene in the book.
Yeah, it's great. I fucking love watching bullies get murdered.
It did. I was like, I wasn't ready for them to say, oh, he's dead.
Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah.
fuck.
And there was a 4th passenger, but this one was in a plastic bag.
Yeah.
The book does not pull punches when it comes to the fact that the kids die.
Yeah.
Which I kind of like for a kid's book. It's like, yeah, this is kind of the nature of war, is sometimes people die. And it doesn't do it in like the mass casualties of battle sort of way, but it does it in this very real, this kid picked a fight. Ender was like, well, the only way I can win this fight is if I goad him into doing it one-on-one. And then Ender just accidentally kills him. which breaks Ender psychologically, makes him think he's more like Peter again, because that's the whole struggle is Ender knows he has to be violent to win, but he's afraid of becoming too violent. He's always trying to toe that line of success versus going too far.
All right, the adults.
I think we talked about... Wait, do we have Ender's parents on here? No. Okay,
I did not include them.
Okay,
because they're not characters. I wrote down Graf, Anderson, and Rackham.
I love the beginning of each chapter as being like conversations between Graf and Anderson.
I don't. They ruined my theory.
They ruined your theory?
I thought that there were going to be no buggers. But
I also thought that was going to be the case.
Oh, that's what you thought the twist was going to be, that there were no buggers?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And they were just doing it to like train soldiers to eventually fight the Soviets.
I'm with you in the sense that a lot, like, to me, this book felt like a more sci-fi version of what was eventually going to be like the kids' version of what 1984 was.
Yeah.
I felt like that was going to happen a lot, and it didn't.
No, it did not.
Oh, man. Spoilers for the rest of the series. A lot of the books are written like this, where it's like the beginning of chapters is conversations between two characters, and then you're getting what they're talking about by midway to the end of the book.
That was fine. I didn't have an issue with it. It's just that I had this big conspiracy theory, and those conversations derailed it very early. So
I'm sorry.
It broke expectations.
Yeah.
At least it didn't give you false expectations too long.
Yeah.
Mazer I like as like an idea. I like the idea of this legendary war hero that, and he's kind of honest about it. He's like, yeah, it was kind of on accident. Like, I had kind of a hunch and it worked. But the propaganda machine portrays him as this like larger than life character that everyone's trying to live up to. I kind of wish we would have I've always wanted, and I'm actually going to order the books about him, is because he was really just kind of like this small reserve commander. It'd be like the National Guard winning World War II. Just based off of a hunch. I bet you if we kill Hitler, all the other Nazis die.
I'm telling you, man, I'm half on this book. I really am. Like, because there's some stuff I legitimately think is very good. And then...
The main reason I like this book is I like the psychological exercise. Like, I study psychology just because of this godforsaken thing.
I think maybe I'm more of a fan of like the sci-fi aspects than the rest. Because I just didn't pay. Maybe
I like the battle school. I like the world building. I like the talk about the Soviets. I like the how they build the world of the battle school. I like. So a lot of people would probably read this book and compare it. If they had to pick an anime to compare it to, they'd probably pick like Death Note because of like these hyper intellectual people manipulating each other. I'm comparing it to Pilot Candidate because that's the world that is most similar to this world, because that's what I pull out of stories.
It's super niche, but yes, I agree with you.
I compare it to Attack on Titan because the Titans are literally propaganda that they don't know who the real enemy is. The big difference is Eren Yeager is the version of Ender that becomes Peter. He's the one that actually goes full Peter. Mostly, I also compare it to it because they use literal child soldiers for the meat grinder against who they think is the enemy, when really their own state is keeping all these secrets from them. That's why I compare those two.
I'm also real dumb and just read this book and tried very hard.
We've read it. We read it one time.
Yeah,
I've read it 15 times.
That's impressive.
Yeah. I do like...
I don't think I've read my driver's license 15 times.
Something that's really great in the sequels is... They talk about this a little bit in this book, but like when you travel through space, like thousands of years pass, but you don't age because you're traveling at these sub-relativistic light speeds. So Ender travels the galaxy, trying to find a new bugger homeworld. And by the time he like stops on planet, history remembers him as Hitler. He's the guy who genocided an intelligent alien species. That's how the history remembers him now. And so he's traveling the galaxy being known as the Xenocider.
That's funny.
And all he's trying to do is like correct what he views as his mistake. He's trying to like
bring the buggers back.
And he finds another intelligent alien species, learns to communicate with them, learns where like and he kind of becomes like that pacifist hero where he's completely and totally against violence, and he learns to communicate with a new alien species and where their misunderstandings come from before a war breaks out. But there's this one military commander, I think it's in book 4 or 5, and he's like the one person who goes, no, Ender was right. I'm gonna use the same bomb on that fucking homeworld, and history can remember me how it wants, but he was correct in his decision making. And it's just kind of weird how history will remember things, like how you view a person through history changes with time, which is another thing I like about the sequels. One of the things I don't like so much is you start to get some of Orson Scott Card's personal morality in there. He's a devout Mormon, so he and I have kind of different views on certain topics, and they kind of start to shine through in some of the books, especially the spin-offs. So
the buggers.
I like that there are multiple hive minds that kind of learn to chill with each other over time. I like that they don't have communication technology, because why would they need it?
I just imagine the queen, the whole hive mind thing is like there's a queen there, and she's weirdly hot.
I'll kill you all! I'll drive you crazy, and I'll kill you all! I'm every nightmare you ever had. I am your worst dream come true. I'm everything you ever were afraid of.
Alright, let's go to scary shit.
Scary shit.
Is this book scary? And before you answer, I want to tell you that the U.S. Marine Corps' professional reading list makes this novel recommended reading at several lower ranks, and again, at officer candidate midshipman rank. The book was placed on the reading list by Captain John F. Smith for providing useful allegories to explain why militaries do what they do in a particularly effective shorthand way.
Kind of gives that whole bombing people thing a new perspective.
I feel like Captain John F. Schmidt got the wrong idea.
I like how it says recommended reading and not required reading.
I think he got the right idea if your idea is, hey, what kind of manipulation tactics work? Because the book is correct; those work.
This is the guy from that meme who literally just has that copy of the book that I told you everybody has, and he's just looking at it and going, why would you say something so controversial and so brave?
But like when it comes to the morality question, I even think Orson Scott Card makes this pretty clear. He's like, this isn't good what happened. It's just
bad.
It's just what does happen is the point of the. And
yep.
I do like reading his books when it comes to like his perspective on history, because his perspective is always history shifts and changes, and you are probably going to be remembered as the bad guy even if you thought you were doing good.
Yep.
And that's something I enjoy. I probably wouldn't say, hey, you should probably copy what you see in this book. I guess if you want to win a war, or
if your mission is to save America,
if you want to win a war, if you want to know how to train soldiers, I think this is a good book to read.
You hop in your wheelchair and you fly to Normandy and you win the fucking war.
This is how you isolate your soldiers, you bully them, and then once they're broken down, you can tell them what to do. It works. Militaries have been practicing it for thousands of years. That's kind of scary. But
it's scary in a meta sense, but is the actual book scary? No, it's not scary.
And one of the reasons I picked this book was because, well, we read a fantasy book.
Let's read a sci-fi book.
Yeah.
Oh my God, are you Stephen King? No, I'm Dean Koontz. Oh.
Kings and Koontz. Hef, you're up first. What is your king for Ender's Game?
Peter's whole deal. Like,
that's your king?
Oh, king. Sorry. Oh my God.
You're being a negative Nancy Reagan tonight.
We haven't gotten.
Okay, so that's your Koontz. What's your king?
Oh, my king.
You're the first lady of
king,
putting me down.
See, this is what I was talking about. Like, it's so hard to pick a king because, again, I'm like half.
All right, mine is Battle School.
I actually really enjoyed the twist of him having the.
A lot of people seem to like the twist.
I like the twist too.
I think that might be because, like, I audibly in my car when I was listening to it went, "Holy
my
shit!
You killed them all!"
Yeah.
When did you realize it?
It was when It was when all the kids started going quiet.
I realized it when all the adults started cheering.
Oh, okay.
So it meant like last possible second.
Yeah.
At
last possible second before Ender was told.
I have one more critique of the movie I need to offer up, and I think it's that the movie was made too late. Because in the movie, like, the simulation that they're using is like these hyper-realistic graphics. So, like, if you're watching this, like, yeah, okay, they actually blew up the bugger world. Where in my head, when I first read this book, they were like
Atari,
but in 3D, and
I didn't even picture 3D.
Yeah, so
I guess it would have to be 3D,
because they talked about the ups and downs, but I pictured like very basic 3D, and that I pictured that was also on purpose to like make it look more like a game.
Yeah, see, I pictured kind of like Reboot.
Oh yeah,
like if you ever watch that.
But but in the movie,
is what I pictured.
Oh, stop talking about Reboot.
So I feel like if the movie had been made like in the 80s, where they had to use like Atari graphics, that the twist would work better. But in the movie, you're like, yeah, of course he blew up the homeworld. It looks like a homeworld he just blew up.
I can see that.
Anyway, oh, you already gave your king. My king is the psychological exercises, because it's why I keep coming back to the book.
My Koontz is Peter and Valentine subplot.
Basically the same. I mean,
my Koontz is Ender didn't kill more. I'm kidding.
He killed them all.
All
but one.
He should have done humans too.
Yeah.
No more lies.
How would he have done that though?
I mean, he could have found a way. He was smart enough. The whole world was afraid to let him come back to Earth.
Could you imagine the twist actually being he realizes that he blew up the bugger homeworld and then turns the ship around and it comes back? Ender, what are you doing? Finishing it.
They would have taken decades to get back. My Koontz is actually Valentine. Not because I think that she's necessarily bad, but I think that for a kid that the book sells as just as intelligent as the other people, yeah, she sure does get manipulated by the sociopath pretty easily into doing exactly what he wants.
I disagree with that. I think it's not that I don't agree with that she like falls victim to it. I think she's supposed to, though. She's supposed to be the one who feels more. She doesn't have Ender anymore. She doesn't have her little brother. I guess that's true. Yeah, but
it's just always sort of bothered me that he's even like, okay, I want you to play the bad cop, and she's like, all right, and just starts typing away.
Well, I mean, to me, like, the exercise there in your standpoint is that, you know, she's playing the exercise with him because she's thinking that she can match him.
Yeah.
But the problem is that she still has her emotive side where she still wants him to love her because they're brother and sister. And since she's more emotional, that to me totally makes sense.
Hiya! Happy Easter!
I still don't like her that much. I liked Peter. I like that he skinned squirrels.
Okay, so I'm curious, before we close up here, like, why do you like Peter so much?
I skinned squirrels.
I don't know what this says about me as a person, but I've always been drawn to sociopathic characters. Like, I really like the character Dexter.
Like the serial killer Dexter?
Yeah, like characters like that I'm fascinated by. It's one of the reasons I studied psychology. I'm like, what goes on in this person's head that has broken, so that they're just so inhuman. I want to understand it. It's like, why are people fascinated by serial killers? To me, it's the same fascination, and I'm equally fascinated by, like, there used to be like this series that was like about monster children, like children who committed the most heinous crimes, and it's like, what is going on in there? And I'm fascinated by that. I like to find out what's going on in their heads.
Fair enough.
I like Risk.
I also like Risk.
Rankings.
It's my number one.
Okay.
Yeah.
It beat Lolita.
Thank God.
Well, I mean, I also like Lolita because I'm just drawn to the like absolute horrible characters. I'm fascinated by them.
Your psychological stuff.
Have you read Little Sisters of Valoria? Got one more time.
I know. I got one more time.
Get on that shit.
Otherwise,
let me ask you this
forever.
question. Do you want to finish The Dark Tower and then be like, oh, I have another book to read?
That's a really good point.
Maybe you should pause The Dark Tower and or just not read it, I guess. It's up to you.
I kind of like it being his number one.
Just leave it as the joke. I knew I was going to struggle with this because this book is very strange to me.
My pants are ready.
So It actually goes below the Song of Susanna. It's actually at number 10.
That's a lot higher than I thought you were going to put it.
Well,
same.
The stuff that I liked, I really liked.
Okay, so it was one of those.
I think this book is very well written. I think a lot of the elements here are just... This feels like a good book to me. It just feels like the parts I didn't like, I just really didn't like. Like, this will be a book I probably pick up again, if that answers your question. Like, I was genuinely interested enough to probably read it again.
I'll give you,
with the exception of a few things.
I'll give you one of the sequels, but I'll tell you when to stop.
Just the Peter, basically everything after that first chapter with Peter, I was like,
if you want this book but with more characterization, I would say read Ender's Shadow, because that's more. Ender's Game is like this thick, and Ender's Shadow is like this thick because they pack more character stuff in it.
Yeah. I like sci-fi as a genre. So, like, there's elements of this book that I think are very good and very enjoyable.
This book is also one of the reasons why I got so into Mass Effect.
I could see that.
Yeah.
It's my new number 37, above the Haunted Mask 2 and below the Werewolf of Fever Swamp.
It's not a bad spot. Yeah. It's in between two Goosebumps books. That's great.
It's the jelly.
It's the jelly of a Goosebumps sandwich. It's the monster slime.
Yep.
Hello, Mr. Stein.
Hello, Mr. Black.
Who's that?
He's the new drama teacher.
Zombie Day. The title was chosen to sound like Endgame as a reference to chess.
That's not bad.
Do you have any Easter eggs?
Not really.
Okay.
He has Orson Scott Card lore.
I know a lot about it because when I first tried to start writing, I wanted to be him, and then the more I learned about him, I was like, oh.
Yeah, maybe not. I got a sense that I would not like him from the afterword. He seemed a little up his own butt.
He got defensive over the years. There was this really popular critique of his book, which I really disagree with. I didn't bring it up here.
That he's Hitler. That Ender's Hitler.
That the book is an apologetica for Hitler. Like, it's a way it was written to justify Hitler's actions.
That is on this book's Wikipedia page.
Yeah, I know, and I'm like, I can understand if people kept hitting you with that over the years. It probably turned you into a little bitch. Like, I'd get a little mad too. Like, your book's about, like, hey, you shouldn't do this to kids. Probably.
Logan got mad about people saying the ring was the A-bomb, so I can only imagine.
Yeah. Could you imagine if people were like, yeah, Frodo's Hitler? Like, all the time would make you mad.
Yeah, that's fair.
And then we'll all be embarrassed.
It would make you defensive.
We'll all be embarrassed when we find out Hitler was really just trying to take the ring back to Mordor.
Oh my god.
We're all going to be so mad.
All right, homework. Describe your battle school army. I want a name. I want you to describe some of the members. What's your strategy for the battle room? What's kind of your army's philosophy?
I completely misunderstood this homework assignment.
All right, what did you think it was?
I thought it was make up your own battle school, to which my thing was, it's going to be a Beyblade battle school.
You could use a Beyblade strategy.
All right.
So I had this whole thing. It was going to be a Beyblade battle school.
This is how he trains his soldiers.
Now, like, as far as like their name, their members and stuff,
it's like the tops, right?
There's 3 tiers. You have to take a test based on engineering, general ability to gather items and materials to make your said Beyblade,
and Beyblade flair.
But you're ranked as far as like whatever test you get based on your entry level. You're like each one of them. Like, the high tier is the Wolf Blitzers. The middle tier is the Cougar Melon Camps.
Ow.
And then the bottom one is the bottom one is the Bobcat Goldwaits, because they all have animal names.
I got watermelon on me on that show.
Ryan, what's your army?
I forgot.
I'm sorry.
Oh, mine's the Raven army. We practice what I call the Nevermore strategy. And what it is intense psychological warfare, where I have my recruits not be so much great at battle, but learning everything we can about everyone else in school via a spy network, so that we can taunt them during the game to get them to make mistakes.
Mine is the That's So Raven army, where we put the children through what would be our real world equivalent to battle school, which is the most horrible psychological experience that children can have in our world, which is being a star on the Disney Channel.
He's just trying to get them molested.
That's Nickelodeon.
Aha. Sure.
Alright, for further reading, I recommend Pilot Candidate and reading the short story Ender's Game.
I'd recommend some of the sequels.
Not all of them. Some of them. I won't tell you which ones. You have to guess.
I recommend nothing.
I don't recommend the one that says gay sex is gross.
No, that's the movie we're about to watch.
It doesn't quite say that, but
it does feel very homophobic.
After they take over some of the bugger homeworlds, because they have to colonize, because they can't just turn around and take them decades to get back, so the ships just stay at the planets they just killed all the buggers on. And they're like, okay, we have to pair everyone up into male and female marriages as evenly as possible because it's the only thing that's worked throughout human history. It's like in a direct line.
Okay, then.
I mean, I get it from you have to populate the planet perspective and not die before other people get there.
Yeah, but you don't have to be in a marriage to create children.
Yeah.
Alright, upcoming on the Horror of Babylon. In December, we're reading The Dark Tower. In January and February, we're reading the first 2 Lord of the Rings books. Thank you, Logan. Thank you, Sierra. And thank you, Horsemen Comics and Gaming.
We love you.
Guys, thanks for reading Ender's Game and recording with me.
Oh, absolutely. I miss the boys.
And I love how you are just so shitty. And then at the end, you're always like, hey, it's really not that bad. I'll read it again.
He's the critiquer.
You did the same thing with Haunting Ground. You're like, guys, 12 hours of you being like, this stupid fucking game. And then at the end, yeah, it was a really unique gaming experience. I really liked it.
I'm an optimist.
Yeah.
All right.
I like to think I didn't waste time.
I liked
when you really did.
I liked the pregnancy horror.
And now for the obligatory socials. Please like, share, and subscribe. You can find the podcast on Twitter at HorrorPod69. You can also follow us on Facebook, Instagram, Slasher, and Goodreads. Become part of the Disturbed community by asking for the Facebook group and Discord links. Send dick pics to the Horror of Babylon podcast at gmail.com. Support the show at patreon.com/the Horror of Babylon. In closing, you can let your friends know that the Horror of Babylon is available on YouTube, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Audible, and all other major podcast apps. Stay scary.